Welcome to Dresden, where Philip and I have just woken up in a historic palace that used to belong to the mistress of the king.
And this is the view from our bedroom.
And I will show you a tour of the room when we get back, but we're rushing out now to see the palace of the king himself, the Elector of Saxony, Augustus the Strong. And we're here because Augustus financed the search that led to the discovery of porcelain here in Europe. Now, it had been discovered hundreds of years before in China, and the Europeans were obsessed with it, and most of the major European nations were desperate to find out how to make it. But that discovery was made in the local village of Meissen nearby, and we'll be going there this afternoon.
Well, this is a pretty lovely site to step out into. Look at the fountains. Now that's the little walkway linking this palace, the palace of the mistress, to the palace of the king. And that is where we are going now. That makes this, I think, the shortest walk that I've ever had from a hotel to a museum. Wow, the internal courtyard. And look, they've enclosed it all superbly. So it's always sunny in here. What is absolutely astonishing is you can see there's a lot of work still going on here. But this was entirely destroyed, as was almost the entire city of Dresden, with carpet bombing in the Second World War. And it has risen like a phoenix from the flames. All of this is being rebuilt. It is the most extraordinary triumph of what man can achieve after adversity. It's the most beautiful place to visit.
It was in this palace that Augustus the Strong had his porcelain cabinet. We can't see that today because it's being worked on at the moment, but we can see a very early tea set. One of the first tea sets was created, and it was created by his court jeweller, a man with a great name, Dinglinger. And Dinglinger made a beautiful tea set which just shows how at the time tea and coffee and chocolate were three incredibly fashionable drinks that had just been imported from all over the world. All of the aristocracy were raving about them, and Dinglinger's set just shows how precious it was. It's entirely made out of gold and precious jewels, and porcelain was so incredibly expensive that Dinglinger even disguised solid gold to look like porcelain by enameling the little teacups and painting them as though they were precious porcelain vessels. Augustus was a man obsessed with porcelain. He makes Philip look like a dabbler. But all the gold tea sets in the world were not enough for Augustus. He wanted the real thing, and in his first year as Elector, he spent over €1 million in today's money on buying porcelain from the Orient. So his chief minister was saying, we have to do something. We have to find a way of making porcelain here, because that would stop all that money from going to the Orient. In fact, they called the Orient the bleeding bowl of Saxony. So that's the residence where we just were, where Augustus lived. We've come over to the Zwinger, a series of buildings that he built just to have a beautiful courtyard arena for grand festivities. As a young man, he had actually travelled incognito around Europe, and he'd been to Versailles. He saw the court of Louis XIV was like his idol, and he wanted to make this capital of Saxony a mini Versailles, and he did make it into the grandest court in Germany. We couldn't see the porcelain cabinet there, but we can see a lot of Augustus's collection because there's a porcelain museum here in the Zwinger. So we're going to go and look at that first to see some of the things that he was buying before the reinvention of porcelain here in Saxony. Do you know, Augustus actually bought over 25,000 pieces of Chinese and Japanese porcelain. We definitely do have the same obsession as he did, don't we? Look at that. It is just exquisite. Talk about giving ideas, hey, Philip?
Yeah.
Try not to take too many ideas.
I think that's what we should do in the Grand Salon. Just like huge porcelain.
Yeah, that's your dream.
But it would be amazing.
Look at the chicken and the cockerel and pomegranates. It's a dream. I love the green against the pink.
I love the blue and white against the bronze.
So many great colour combinations here.
So how did Augustus go from spending all of the state money on the porcelain we've just seen to actually creating the most famous porcelain in all of Europe? And that's where a young chemist comes in called Johannes Friedrich Böttger. He was both a genius and a bit of a fraudster. At the time, there were a lot of people wandering around the courts of Europe saying that they were alchemists who'd found the philosopher's stone and who could transmute base metal into gold. Now, there were a lot of wars going on all around Europe, and you can imagine a lot of the monarchs and princelings wanted money very, very desperately. So these charlatans were able to go around saying, oh, if you just fund my experiments, within 6 months I'll be able to give you all the gold you want, and they'd escape to another part of Europe before getting caught. And the penalty for doing that was death. Now, Böttger was a genius chemist, and I think he believed in himself, and I think he honestly believed that he would be able to turn base metal into gold. But in order to fund all of his experiments, he was telling people he could do it already, and he was even making fake experiments showing himself doing just that. Word got around to the rulers, and he came to be imprisoned here by Augustus the Strong. He moved him to a hilltop fortress, the oldest castle in Germany, in Meissen, where he bricked up all of the windows and told him that he couldn't come out until he'd created gold. And in spite of trying to escape, Böttger actually remained imprisoned by Augustus for the rest of his life. Böttger was failing to make gold, and he was getting into hotter and hotter water and very much fearing for his life. And one of the ministers of Augustus the Strong said, well, you know, Augustus does really love porcelain. If you can't give him gold, maybe try to give him porcelain. I think that would probably go down well. So that's what Böttger did. He started working on porcelain and he cracked it. He got exactly the right proportions of kaolin, feldspar and quartz to create this miracle product that we take completely for granted today. But just imagine in a day when you're drinking your tea from a silver cup. What does silver do? It's a conductor. You're burning your hands. I mean, it's really uncomfortable. Porcelain insulates the drink beautifully. It looks beautiful. It's strong. The colours that it's painted with never fade. So when you look at a piece of porcelain, you're looking at the true colours of the past in a way that you can't with oil paintings or with painted decorations or with fabrics. They've all faded over time, but porcelain hasn't. Böttger was actually quite annoyed because he really did want to find a way of making gold, and he scribbled over the door of his laboratory, God the Creator has made a gold maker into a potter. But what a potter. And in fact, at the time, porcelain could be even more valuable than gold.
So this is what they started to make once they could make their own porcelain.
Incredible.
And Meissen even remade the Japanese one that we were looking at earlier. Oh my goodness, there's an entire menagerie. I mean, look at those flowers. They look real.
Yeah.
As soon as Böttger discovered the formula, the factory at Meissen was born, and it remains one of the most famous porcelain factories in the world. And we are going to head over there right now. We have arrived at the new Meissen factory. It's very different from the castle. I think I prefer the castle, but this could be a little more convenient.
And the very first thing we see is a squirrel.
So if that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
Well, my goodness, the facade inside the building is much nicer than the facade outside the building. This is spectacular. Coming up the main stairs to the museum, it is now absolutely certain that the squirrel is following Philip.
We are so excited to see these pieces. They don't look like porcelain. They're in fact red stoneware, but it's a type of porcelain, and it's the first type that Böttger actually discovered. It was when he discovered how to make this that he realised he was on something. It's one of the main things being produced at first because the white wasn't perfected yet. And they tried to sell them the very first year they made them at the big Easter fair, and they didn't sell very well. So for about 10 years, actually, Meissen didn't make a profit at all. But if you could go back in time to that Easter fair and pick up a couple of these teapots or vases, you'd do very well indeed, because nowadays a teapot can sell for £100,000 if you can find the original red stoneware that he made. So feels very, very special to look at this.
But you can see from this huge key, it's over a foot tall,
that they did finally get the white porcelain spot on. It looks brand new, but it was made in 1714. And it's actually a drinking vessel. You can turn it upside down and drink from that.
and from the moment they had a stable white base, then of course came the absolutely glorious colours. This is a tea and coffee set from 1730, and I think these yellow ones are amongst the most delightful ones that were made. I love the yellow. When thinking of Meissen, most people immediately think of the famous onion pattern that they have been producing for centuries.
It was their take on an original Chinese design, and it was misnamed the onion pattern because, in fact, what looks like the onions going around the rim in the Chinese design are actually pomegranates and peaches alternating around the design. but in Europe they thought they were onions. So it's remained named the onion pattern ever since. And on these old pieces, you can't see any Meissen mark on the front. The Meissen mark, the cross swords, is obviously on the back. But in the new plates that Meissen are making of the onion pattern, they actually very discreetly put the cross swords on the front, because there are many other factories around the world copying Meissen and making the same pattern. And so they feel that you should be able to know that you're eating on a Meissen onion pattern plate the minute you sit down to it, without having to surreptitiously turn it over to check. I must say I've never seen it in the gold before. These date from the 1730s, and I'm guessing bling was very much in fashion. In the early years, Meissen was copying, as we've just seen, those designs from China. But eventually they started to produce their own styles, and they became so wildly successful that it wasn't long before the Chinese were copying the Europeans. And here, from the 1730s, you can see this coffee set. These beautiful, blousy, very European-styled flowers show how tastes were changing and they were finding their own styles. I especially love the way it looks. So little insects have just landed on the plates to get closer to the flowers. And on this set from the 1740s, you can see there's absolutely nothing Chinese or Japanese about the style of the figures, their clothing, and the scenery. We've mentioned how they really focused a lot on tea sets, coffee sets. But here you can see a chocolate pot that we were talking about. They always had a wooden handle, and in the top, you see poking out of it, there's a little wooden whisk. You could vigorously whisk up the milk and the chocolate to make a lovely, thick, foamy drink. And here you can see the woman actually bringing the hot chocolate through to drink. And do you notice how it doesn't look like a normal cup? And that's because the chocolate cups we usually went in a little frame like this, and that's how you know you're looking at a chocolate cup and not a tea or coffee cup, because it would be madness to drink them from the same vessel. I have to say, Philip, of every single figure we've seen, that's the one I would choose.
She's fun.
Here we're looking at one of the most famous Meissen services. It was actually made for a director of Meissen, who back in the 18th century, when you were a director, you could order an entire dinner service and not pay for it. And he needed a very impressive dinner service, and this was made for him. It must have been so innovative at the time. You can stare at this set for hours. You seem to get lost in the watery depths of it. And it's not just swans, there's other life that you would find around a lake as well. You can see there's shells, there's even a heron. And there are tiny little fish just poking their heads out of the waves. That one looks more like a dolphin, actually. Look at the centerpiece for it, with all of the swans. Beyond spectacular.
What I like about the centerpieces is that, as you can see, there's just different pieces. So if you wanted to have just one of those, you could just take them off.
That is actually the teapot.
That's what I was saying.
So the centerpiece is made to hold the teapot, and you can lift it off.
And I think it's a coffee pot over there.
Mind-blowing. As you can see, the original service was covered in little flowers and some gold, but they still make this service today, all in white, and it is absolutely spectacular. And about 5 years ago, an incredibly generous person who watched the Chateau Diaries here in East Germany actually sent me one of those white bowls, and it's been in my bathroom ever since. And when he sent it, he said that it was to make me realise that one day the lake will come back and I must not give up hope. I like the way that they've actually put some of the displays on these little brackets on the wall, because that's very much how they would have been displayed in the 18th century. Writers at the time were complaining that people would put them on every shelf, every cupboard, every table, and stack them up on brackets on the wall, that there was no stopping the need for porcelain. Meissen are really known for their hydrangea vases. So the whole vase looks as though it's a sort of giant hydrangea, then with extra little hydrangea pompons put onto it. But what's extraordinary is that every single one of those little petals has to be modelled by hand. They have like a little mould and a tiny bit of clay put over the tip of the mould until it forms the little flower. And for a huge vase, there are over 5,000 of those individual petal-like flowers, all attached by hand. It's mind-blowing. And these are called singeries. Singe just means monkey in French, and singeries were monkeys dressed to look like humans. They were very, very popular in the 18th century because they're meant to represent the folly of man, that inside us all is this animal instinct, and we often allow ourselves to be ruled by that animal instinct.
And all of the paintings and the sculptures of that were designed to show man his true nature.
Either to remind us to be sensible and push away that base nature, or as I prefer to see it, to remind us not to take ourselves too seriously. He's always watching us.
I love this set. I mean, I love the colour of the blue, but also look at the shapes, look at the neo-Gothic shapes.
It represents the holy grail for us because we keep looking for neo-Gothic designs and they're really rare.
I've got some of the cutlery that was made by a guy called Armand Frenet. It's got neo-Gothic design, and I would love some plates to go with it.
It's incredible, and it does just remind me so much of the chapel. And this shows how Meissen, throughout its history, has always kept up with the latest fashions. This is really fun from the 70s. It's amazing how they've modelled the candlesticks to look like the curtains in the background, against which they put a whole wedding party. Look, the priest in the middle, and the way they've tilted the table forward so you can see the things on the table.
It's amazing.
Very cool. It's having chicken and fish.
I mean, come on.
No way. The surtout de table to end all surtout de table. So if anyone who saw Philip in Ardmore designing a set like this will go all the way down a table. Philip, why were you thinking so small?
You're right. Okay, Faye, if you're watching.
We're upscaling. This is amazing.
Is it just? It's not going to fit in the Grand Salon, is it?
It's not going to fit in the car.
I saw this at auction several months ago.
Philip, I'm always having a go at you for getting things at auction, but Philip, in this case, what are you thinking? It's beautiful.
I was thinking that I'd rather keep both kidneys.
Oh, was it that bad?
Yes.
Oh no, it's absolutely stunning.
I'm just shopping.
You know it's an illness. It actually says at the beginning of this museum.
I've made a list on my phone of everything. I haven't, but
Augustus the Strong called it a malady. I'm just saying.
Look, but everything worked out for him. Created.
I really can't recommend this museum enough. We are transfixed. Every single case you look in has something that just draws you to it. I mean, in this case, look, the dog just lying on its cushion. Oh, isn't it perfect? There's a model of us. Look, it's you unpacking your latest vase. And me just drinking a cup of tea, wondering what you've done.
Slightly annoyed until you fall in love with it. And wonder how you live without it.
And you're going, oh, thank goodness, that cupboard behind me just didn't have enough vases on. They're amazing. I love them. Look at the little sort of candelabra in the foreground. This one is called The Forbidden Party, and it's by Chris Anterman, the design. It's so joyful. I mean, a little bit naughty, but it's really a massive celebration of the pleasures of life.
Because they're not wearing any breeches, you can really see that some people are enjoying the party more than others.
Philip, the pleasures of porcelain, food, wine, little macarons, and pleasant conversation, I think is what they're going for there, Philip. Look, these two are having a very lovely conversation. I think these two are indulging in a little bit of salacious gossip.
I have to admit, at Meissen, exit through the gift shop takes on a slightly different meaning. For example, if you want a clock, do you have a spare 100,000?
Because if so, you would get a full 5,000 back in spare change if you bought this clock.
But it's extraordinary. There is no factory production here. Everything is by hand. The moulding of each piece, the painting of each piece, both the underglaze painting and the overglaze painting. One person to throw things on the wheel first and mould them, then another to assemble all of the little different pieces. When you see the amount of work, the amount of people involved in the production of every single item, you start to understand the prices. We are now walking through the drizzle to the train station in Meissen to go back to Dresden. But we did find something in the factory shop. I got the cup and saucer that matches the beautiful bowl that I was telling you about that I have. The bowl that inspires me about the return of the lake. I was so delighted to see the cup and saucer.
We are leaving Meissen just as the rain was really coming in. I mean, you can't really tell through these windows, but it is the most beautiful city. And that in the distance is the castle where Böttger was imprisoned and discovered the formula to create porcelain. My goodness, this is a beautiful place to come back to after a day of visiting the sights. I think this might qualify as the prettiest hotel corridor that I've wandered down.
And we did film the minute we arrived and saw the room for the first time, so this was our first impressions.
We've got a hallway.
It is. It's an actual entrance hall.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
That's got to be taller than the Grand Salon, the new Grand Salon upstairs. It's incredible.
I love the wallpaper. Oh, hello.
Oh, that's in German. I can't help us with that.
Ein süßer Gruß, frei von... A sweet greeting, free from any nuts and egg whites.
I did tell them your allergies. I can't believe they've done that.
Isn't it quite funny that we've got an entrance hall in the hotel we're staying in and not at the chateau?
Already the 14 hours have been worth
I
it.
say after 14 hours is exactly what I've been hoping for.
We're just going up the original staircase of the palace, which actually is the only roll pub that survived during the war. So that was still standing. Everything else has had to be reconstructed, and it's been done so incredibly, as we've seen in the rest of Dresden. It's amazing what they've done. And you've seen our room, which is an absolutely beautiful junior suite. But we are here with one of the managers who is going to show us something very, very special. And we're going to see the royal suite.
Here we go. Let's all dream together, because here they've created a royal suite in a more contemporary style, but worthy of the times that this was a royal palace for the king's mistress. This is the feminine side of the suite. They've really concentrated on fashion and glamour, and that's looking through to the bedroom at the end with that stunning wallpaper. But if we look behind us, we can see that the suite goes on all the way to the other end of the building, and that's the more masculine side of the suite, so we'll go and look at that in a sec. Let's start here first with, of course, a private kitchen, because you never know, the desire to make some delicious German food might suddenly overcome you. Of course, a special wine fridge. I can imagine relaxing here, maybe just before getting ready to go to the opera.
Which is just over the road, and unbelievably after this, we're going there tonight to see a German musical.
And then I'm just being drawn to the bedroom. Look, I could edit the videos there. I mean, it's almost necessary to stay here. Well, this is just the prettiest thing I can imagine. And that must be a dressing room, I think. Oh, a huge one. Hello, everyone. And then I'm always excited to see the bathrooms. I don't know if you're like me. I just love looking at beautiful places. So if I have any chance to look at incredible hotel rooms, I'll take it. Relaxing after a heavy day of sightseeing, maybe in Meissen. Now that is what I call a floor-to-ceiling mirror. Then we found the loo, less interesting, and the shower with a bench for two. So now let's go the other way and see the masculine side of the suite. This is where it becomes the king's suite. Apparently you can rent them separately, the king's or the queen's, or all as one. So again, there is a sitting area and a truly spectacular dining room with views of Dresden. So you get the same view inside as you get outside the window. In fact, this view of Dresden was painted by the younger Canaletto. He was the nephew of the famous Venetian Canaletto, and he travelled around Europe. He came to Dresden, and he painted the most beautiful paintings of Dresden in the 18th century. And they are here in the museum, and this one has been turned into the wallpaper for this room. You always get great ideas coming to look at places like this. Lots of things that I think we could use back at Lalande. And of course, another kitchen, because you might want to cook something different from your partner. You certainly wouldn't want to do it in the same kitchen. No, no, no. And then what's in this little golden room beckoning over here? A corridor. Another dressing room. Another bathroom. Nope, I think that's just a loo. Sorry that I don't know where I'm going. You and I are really discovering this together at the moment. And then around here, yes, the masculine bedchamber. His and hers chinoiserie, pale blue-green over there and dark blue over here. So elegant. And then through here, presumably the other bathroom. Oh, another long corridor. And yes, the bathroom. And oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, who doesn't need that in their bathroom?
Actually, in the 18th century, when bathrooms were installed, they usually had a daybed in them. Marie Antoinette, for example, had a daybed by her bath because it was considered unhealthy to get straight up after the bath. You had to lie there to let your blood pressure slowly come back to normal. And that's a very good thing, I think, that we should do again these days.
There's another huge shower. Another, I've lost track of how many loos I found. And an entire sauna. Well, this is just how the other half live. Well, they live extremely well. Lucky, lucky people. And so I'm wondering if this is another way out. No, another dressing room. And just a delightful extra sitting-in room. Yes, very important. If Philip and I had this entire suite, I think that would give us 3 sitting rooms. And what a view. And that's the opera house that I was just talking about. That's where Philip and I are going to be going this evening.
And the best thing about this suite is that you can live in palatial kingly splendour without actually being the mistress of Augustus the Strong, because that was not an easy position to have in life. This was built for his favourite mistress, and in fact they were together for 11 years and had 3 children together. But when he tired of her and took a different mistress, she complained and said that no, you actually wrote a contract saying that you would marry me if you could, and that we are basically betrothed even though you've already got a wife. And he was like, I don't know what contract you're talking about. He had actually got a contract with her and she'd given it to her cousin for safekeeping. So when he packed her up out of this palace to install his new mistress here, she tried to escape to Berlin to get that contract, but she was followed by his guards who stopped her before she could actually get to it. She was forcibly brought back to Saxony and she was imprisoned in a very bleak tower about 15 kilometers from here, and she spent the rest of her life, 50 years, there in captivity. But that is not the case if you book the Royal Suite, because you can come and go as you please. There is, however, just one consideration that you will need to bear in mind, and that is that staying here will cost you 12,000 euros for the night if you take the entire suite. And if you have that money, then I think there's not much you can do with it that would be more pleasant than this. We do not, and we're going to go back to our extremely lovely junior suite to get changed, ready for the opera. Just before coming, I was looking to see what was on in the area, and I discovered that Philip's second favourite musical in the world, Elisabeth das Musical, about the Empress Sissi, is actually on at the Opera House in Dresden. So I got tickets for us tonight, and I will show you the interior of the Opera House, even though I won't be able to show you any of the actual musical.
Still spitting with rain a little, but luckily we don't have far to go. It's just over the road from our hotel. My goodness, it's a beautiful building. I can't wait to see the inside. Philip and I did not plan to be matching, but matching we are.
This musical is entirely in German. I'm not going to understand a word of it. Luckily, I know about the life of the Empress Sissi, and Philip told me a bit more about the actual opera, but I won't know what's going on.
Oh my goodness, even if I don't understand a word of the opera, this was already worth it. This is spectacular. Oh, it looks quite rocky. It's that stunning frieze going all along the front of the proscenium arch, and then statues and all of it. Well, the show was wonderful, and we've stepped out into the square in Dresden to hear a cello playing and Philip singing. This is so romantic, I can't believe it. I can't help falling in love with you. Well, good night from incredibly beautiful Dresden, everyone. It's as though we've stepped into a fairy tale. And I will next see you on our journey back to Lalande tomorrow.